Yep.
Discord. How
And
about
we're
now?
in here.
Good.
We're here now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good part of the day, depending where you are. Welcome everyone to Large Scale Scrum Meetup. Large Scale Scrum of New York City, the largest, the biggest, the fastest growing, the first one ever. Today we have a slightly different topics, different in the sense that it's not less specific, although we have quite a few less savvy and less friendly and less knowledgeable people on the call. Today we have a special treat from a few colleagues of mine, and these folks are generous enough to share with us some of their experiences and knowledge around uh, running their own business, although it could be just a one-man operation, one-man show, small businesses, but they have collected some valuable experience over the years. So they will be sharing it with us. And let me do a quick intros of all three of them. We'll start with Jim Carpenter, whose idea it was. Jim is an experienced independent agile transformation coach, software engineer, and the author of a few interesting pieces. And he grew up in Texas. I think he grew up on the farm, so he may tell us more about
Yes.
that if you would like to. He actually is in the process of writing a case study at the moment, so that would be interesting to see when it goes out. And he also has a book out there, Forge and Change, on agile restructuring and practice, something that's available on Amazon. Next, I'm going to introduce my good friend and colleague, Dana Pulleyeva. She's an active, co-active coach, active and very co-active. And she has a lot of experience with business agility and leadership coaching. She's a frequent conference speaker and presenter, and she has quite a bit of experience in the space of DevOps and coaching from the back of the room and co-active coaching. And last but not least, we have David Stackleather with us, who's got 20 plus years of experience of working in the corporate world. And I think if I read Dave correctly, he left that greatness for better greatness of becoming an independent person. And that made him learn many tips and tricks that he will be sharing with us as well. He is also a coach and active person in the community. So between the three of you guys, I certainly have faith in you. You will do the best for our community. We shall record this, and any artifacts we produce along the way, I would like to collect them and make them available afterwards. People are welcome to ask questions, and the speakers will pace you, poll you, um, do whatever. Okay. So I'm going to pass it on to you. Whoever wants to pick this up first.
Okay, I think we had a little poll that we want to start this from, right, James?
Yes.
All right.
That and yeah, make sure people have the pre-read content. So I'll recopy it again.
Okay.
So even if you didn't get to pre-read it, having it handy during the conversation will be helpful. So I just sent the link for that. And then poll them, and we'll see where we are.
All right. Because what we're trying to do, we have a lot of content. That's why there was this pre-read material sent out. We don't expect to read it sentence by sentence, but we do want to give you what's going to be the most useful to you in this hour and a half. So that's why we're going to give you this little poll, and then we'll adjust based on what the most interest is from the group of people who came here today, right? So I'm launching the poll, and tell me if you've seen something on your end.
I am.
Okay, excellent. So go ahead and respond to the poll. And this is the first time I'm doing a poll with 6 questions. So if I mess something up, then it's a big experiment. So hopefully you're able to respond. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing people responding. Okay, great. Awesome. It's always fun to try something for the first time with the audience of 28 plus people.
Dana, I'm on the mobile phone. I see your face, but I didn't see the poll.
That might be a challenge if you're on the mobile. That's good to
Oh,
know.
because of the pop-up, right? Okay.
If we get most people's opinions, that kind of gives us direction.
So Randy, for your benefit, if you're not seeing the questions, so what we're asking people is, do you already have your own legal entity, either LLC or S Corp, C Corp, whatever? What do you have in terms of medical insurance? Can you use your spouse's insurance if you're working as a self-incorporated entity? Have you recently contracted or consulted, or are you planning to do that anytime soon? So how relevant is this going to be what we're going to share? And then some of the other questions here, we are going to be very US specific. So again, is this going to be helpful to you or not? And have you had the chance to read what we sent you? And if you have, then that's great. If no, that also is a good feedback for us. So we know how deep to go into this. So nothing
So the
too.
material, I was saving it. But
Okay.
as far as the insurance is concerned, I think right now I'm still using my wife's insurance. I do have a legal entity. My consulting on a personal basis is just a few, right? Because I still have a day job.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. So we are at 21 out of 25. So I'm going to give maybe another few seconds and then I'm going to share the result of the poll because we're already getting pretty good view into what we're dealing here with today. All right, so it stays 21 for now. So I'm just going to end the poll and you should see the results. So it looks like
Where do the results show up?
oh, I should click the share button. Thank you for
Okay.
thanks for reminding. So you should be able to see it now. Let me see if I can expand it. So it looks like I'll have to scroll through them. So it looks like almost even split. We have a little bit more on the no, but you know, 43% of people already have their own entity. And okay. Most of the people don't have the luxury of having spouses medical insurance. So James, your topic would be very relevant there.
Yeah, they'll be interested.
Yeah, and then in terms of recent contracting, consulting experience, looks like majority, 62% had some experience there. 29% are playing with the idea. Probably that's why you're here. You want to figure out does it even make sense or what's involved? So that's really cool. And then 10% are here who no, we haven't done it yet, but hey, who knows, right? And so 19% is saying no, US specific is not going to be interesting. See how much you get from what we're going to be sharing, because I plan to share more stuff about, hey, you also need to take care of yourself. So see how it goes. So if it's not relevant, feel free to drop off. Feel free to just grab the link and see if that's something you can use partially, or just stay here, grab a cup of coffee and enjoy the conversation. What else? Look at that, 76% have done the pre-read. James.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty awesome, David. That's awesome, right?
That's better than I hoped for.
All right.
So
all
that's
right.
good.
All
So we'll get some great questions.
Yeah. And then
yeah,
4 people actually read it cover to cover. That warms my heart. Thank you. All right.
So let's dot vote them and see where we want to go, and we'll go there.
All right. Fantastic. So since we all know and love Excel spreadsheets, we're going to show you one right now. And what we want you to do is to actually dot vote on things that are relevant to you in this huge topic of running your own consulting business. And Jean said it might be a one-man show. I can also attest it can be a one-woman show. So it's not just one man. It could be either genders or, whatever variety. It could be just one person running it and
One
might be pretty
human.
lonely. One human. Thank you. Yes, I love it. Thanks for that. Okay, and so we want to kind of figure out what's going to be most relevant. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share my screen with that beautiful Excel spreadsheet that James put together. And what we will do, we will use a feature of Zoom that's called annotate. So if you don't know how to get to annotate, what you're going to do, you're going to look up at your Zoom screen. And on the top of it, you're going to see this button that says you are viewing Dana Pulleyeva's desktop. Right next to it, there would be, again, something that says more. If you click on that, one of the options in that drop down would be this little pencil and the word annotate. So go ahead and click on that.
So you haven't shared yet?
I haven't shared. I am sharing.
Oh, are you?
Am I sharing?
Yeah,
Hold on.
I see it.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
s-
I've
do you
got
see
it's
s-
hiding. It's hiding.
Okay, so you should be seeing Excel
I see
spreadsheet
it.
right now.
I see it now.
Okay, so when you click on the annotate, it will give you this little additional toolbar with different things there. So just go ahead and mess this slide completely. Just go ahead and draw on it, put some stamps. I want you to find stamps because that's what we will be using for that voting. But right now, just so I know that you found that feature, just go ahead and mess this up. I have a magic way to clean it up in 1 second. So just go ahead and try it, see that you are able to find that annotate toolbar. All right, is there anyone who is still looking for the annotate toolbar? Let me know if I need to repeat instructions. So let's, Mark, are you still looking for it?
Yeah, I never use it, so I'm
Okay,
lost
okay,
where it is.
cool. So basically in the Zoom, are you able to see on the top of the window, there is this thing that says that you are viewing my desktop.
Hmm.
What do you see right next to it?
There is nothing.
There is nothing.
There is nothing. Yeah.
Are
Just
you
says I'm
on,
viewing it. I'm
are
on the
you,
latest version of Zoom.
and are you on the computer or laptop or
Computer.
iPad on the computer?
Yeah. Don't worry about it. So
Okay, but yeah,
this is one of the reasons why I don't use annotate, because sometimes it shows up for me, sometimes it doesn't. So
I see.
yeah. So don't worry about it.
Okay, but if you will be able to see, so typically right next to the indicator that's you in my desktop, there would be this little button that will give you an option to expand the drop down with multiple things on that menu, one of which is
Yep.
annotate. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to, so has everyone had a chance to play around and mess this thing up? You guys are very reserved today. They have people drawing faces and, all the crazy stuff. And you're just very conservative and very, I don't know, very structured. Just go ahead and mess it up. What's wrong with that? They'll fix it in 1 second. Yeah, someone did this thing. That's awesome. Be creative. Yes, thank you. I love that squiggly thing over there, the big one, and smiley face. That's fantastic. Okay, everyone got a chance to play, right? Awesome. So I'm gonna now clean this up. Hi, Dana and Jean. Hi. All right, so I'm gonna clear this all up. Oh, I'm gonna save it. This is so awesome. So I'm gonna save it first. And now I'm gonna clean it up. And once I clean it, then your instruction would be to read through these 18 or 17 things that we have here and put a stamp next to the one that you want to talk about. So let's agree that we are giving people 5, 7 votes. James, what do you think?
I would do, so 19 divided by 3. So like, well, that's 5, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
give
So 4, maybe 5, maybe.
Okay, let's go with 5. I feel generous today. So
Okay.
we'll have 5 votes per person. You can pick whichever stamp you like, or you can pick variety of stamps. That's up to you. But remember, you only have 5. So you're going to put those 5 either on one topic, if that's the one that resonates the most, or you can spread them across 5 different topics, or however you want to spread them. The idea is that if you want to talk about something, if you want us to go deep in that area, then let's make sure that we have a star, a heart, or any other kind of stamp next to it. Okay? Excellent. So I'm going to clear this up, clear all drawings. And now you have this spreadsheet for voting. So 5 votes. Go ahead and start putting things where they belong. All right. Looks like no one wants to talk about medical evacuation insurance. Sorry, James.
That's good. That's good. No, that's, I didn't think they would. A lot of these are simple facts. If you know they exist, that's all you need to know, you know, and then you're good. There's not complexity. There's just knowledge of existence.
And there is more information in that pre-read. So if you want to go deep into specific area, we have it. It's just what do we prioritize?
I'm a little disappointed kidnapping insurance isn't higher on the list.
Oh.
Yeah, that
Actually,
goes in the.
Go ahead, sorry.
No,
No, I said I had no idea that it was something that existed. So
yeah, that just goes in the know that it exists and know that apparently all you do is call your broker and they can do it.
Yep.
And
Okay,
if you
cool.
really need it, don't go there.
Yep. Okay, so it looks like we're getting pretty good feel for where to start. Or at least I trust that James has that very good feel.
Yeah, it's all health insurance and PEO, which is all interrelated. And there's a lot of corporate insurance questions. A little bit of retirement. Well, more of this LLC and Dana, for you, tons of sales and marketing questions.
Yep.
Which is good. What do you think we go? Health insurance first, I guess? Is that what I'm reading?
Or the corporate insurance.
Yeah, okay, I can talk. I'll do a 10-minute timer and we can do 5-minute extensions. So I'll start with corporate, it's easy. So guys, what I know about corporate insurance is when you try to get onboarded with a client, they will tell you, you need to have this list of insurance. And you call up your corporate insurance broker and you tell them, I need this thing, and this thing. And they go and they do quotes and they come back and they say, hey, pay us money. And it's usually like, you know, $3,000 a year or so by the time you're done. There's insurance for, do you fall and, you know, if you have an employee on site and they trip on an electric cord, is that employee covered? There is someone goes, I'm at a client and I throw tacks on the floor and cause other people to, or I throw marbles on the floor and cause other people to fall. There's what other nonsense? Oh, sorry, I don't have my here's time. There's car insurance sometimes they'll make you have. So if you have people in the car that are with the client and you have a wreck, that's covered. There's sometimes it covers like taxi cabs and all that. Anyway, basically they give you a list and you have to supply it. And it's as simple as that, other than insurance brokers get paid the same no matter how good a service they give you or don't give you. So a lot of them seem to just not be that good. So it can be hard to find an insurance broker that's decent. I've had decent luck with tech insurance. There's something to be said for just going direct to the vendors, but then you have to know, who they are. And I gave you a list of some of them. In my case, doing agile consulting, I eventually had a client that needed me to have errors and omissions. And apparently errors and omissions, coaching is a weird thing. So if I was a heads down software engineer, or if I was a welder, or if I was some normal thing, then this goes in some sort of job code, and they will issue, and insurance companies will issue E&O based on that job code. Apparently I was strange, and it was the first time for me to get it. So I ended up getting it from, the insurance broker got it from Lloyd's of London or Beasley. And apparently this is a more, we'll write you a policy for any kind of thing. And what was interesting is when I got a renewal, the broker said, hey, we can keep you on Beasley/Lloyd's, or we can switch you over to Philadelphia. And what was interesting about Philadelphia is, because I already had it, they had me fill out a form that said, basically, has anybody sued you? Have you had any cases since recently? And the answer is no. And so they're like, oh yes, now we'll get you. So sometimes getting this stuff the first time is harder than continuing it. I don't know, David, Dana, do you have any insights there?
I've not done errors and omissions, so I just have general liability. And since I've been out on my own, you don't actually go anywhere on site, so I don't need any kind of throwing the marbles. So I've kept it very, very simple. And then in the couple of cases, most of my clients have been fairly small companies, so they don't have the long raft of kind of Fortune 500 requirements, but I've kind of whittled it down and eliminated from the contract anything as much as I could, and then just went to the Hartford and said, I need this insurance and general liability and umbrella, and haven't had to do anything more complicated than that thus far.
Oh, Hartford is interesting. I know when I was onboarding with an investment bank, and I showed them my Hartford based, most of my stuff except for the E&O is Hartford. And they were like, oh, that's good insurance. For whatever reason, when they heard Hartford, they shut up and went away, and they were like happy. It's like when my wife was in the hospital and had trouble, and I handed them an Aetna card. They're like, oh, and they were all excited because they knew that Aetna would pay. So Dana, you had an interesting workers' comp.
Yeah, so basically I'm using Hiscox as the insurance broker, and the two insurances that I have general liability and I have errors and omission. And what I found is that you're right, James, sometimes when you work with the large organizations, they give you a list of things that you have to have. And what I discovered is that you can actually argue that not everything applies. Like when I was working for, I was running a class for New York Public Library. They wanted me to have this automobile insurance, and I argued that I don't drive to your place. I go by subway, so I don't need that. So they took it away from the contract. And then some other cases when worker comp was required, and everyone was saying like you have to get it. Again, my argument was that I'm one woman operation, so I don't need worker compensation insurance. As soon as I get the second person working for me, then yes, I would absolutely require to have that. But if I'm one person, then I do not need worker comp.
Well, you can argue that you don't need it. Ultimately, they have to be happy. You either have to convince them to accept it or be willing to walk away. I mean, or just pay it. So
true.
You can push a little is the point.
But I think what's good is being aware that yes, you can push back. So this is a list of things that they want you to have, but depending on how hard they want you to come and do something for them, you may have a way to push back.
Quick question. This is actually it's my own question. Can you provide proof of having it at the beginning? Once they validate you, approve you, you can deactivate it. So they won't check again, would they? It's just
Oh,
a one-time thing.
Yes,
Yeah, you would-
they do
Um,
contract
Yeah.
compliance.
Yeah, but you don't
They'll
want
ask you now
to
and
get
then.
into a situation where something happens and you actually don't have insurance anymore. So I don't
Yeah.
think that would be a
Well,
good idea.
I'm talking
But
about
they'll
work.
also check. They'll also check every so often.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah,
do.
require you to resubmit.
If they care, they'll
proof.
check.
yeah.
But that's
they're-
that's a problem because it's fraud if you do that.
Well, yeah, not to get to the point of, being.
Yeah,
fraud-
not that we're recording it, right?
I mean, you have to, some of them will check, but even if they don't, if anything ever happened, you can't.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it depends on the amount of insurance. It may not be worth it. There's a risk there. It may not be worth it. It's kind of like, car insurance. You could technically may have
So-
proof of insurance and then cancel it, but then the risk is so great that it's not really worth the
To
effort.
clarify, not the insurance itself, but the workers' comp part, given that you have no employees.
Oh, I see what you're specific.
I wasn't
okay.
referring to the insurance. I wasn't referring to the workers' comp piece, which is arguably not applicable from,
An interesting aspect of the normal, not the workers' comp stuff, but the normal errors and omissions and general liability, et cetera. That covers you. Like, I'm still paying the darn guys, because if a previous client were to come up and sue me today for who knows why, I have to have coverage now. It's not just that I had it then, I have to have it now for them to still cover it. Now, if I was going to retire, apparently there's insurance that is like retirement insurance. Like if you're a medical doctor and you say, I'm going to retire, you can get insurance that will cover you from now until, you're dead. But that's like shutdown insurance. But normally you're going to have to keep this darn stuff and keep paying them every year just to maintain coverage for all those evil things you did when you were at the client. So that's worth knowing.
Hmm.
Oh, HISOCs. I've heard good things. I've never used them. Are they a broker or are they just a provider? Are they an individual provider?
That's a great question. Someone told me this is the good place to go. I went, and that's I don't know if they're broker or individual provider, but basically they're on the insurance policy. Their name is on that, and whenever I need to provide the certificate of insurance with specifically calling out the company that I'm working with, because that's what they usually want. So that's what the policy that I get with the HISCOC. So guess that makes them a provider versus the broker.
Yeah,
I
if they're
don't know.
the actual insurance
I think Mark had
person,
something.
then they're the provider.
Mark,
Yeah, I was
did he
just
have
saying
something
that-
yet? Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, they're a provider. I went
provider.
through some other broker site to get
Mhm.
so I have Hiscox general liability. there
Okay.
somewhere.
Does anybody know a great broker other than Tech Insurance? It'd be nice to have more than one.
Well, I have Hitchcock's myself, and
But you went direct on that one.
no, well, I have someone who, I have a
We
name.
got it for you.
Yeah, who got it for me.
You want to vote us up or down for 5 minutes, Dana?
Hold us up or down for 5 minutes. How do
Do
I
we
do
continue on
that?
this topic? Do we continue this topic? Or do we move to the next? So if we
Okay,
continue,
yes.
we can do it.
So what we can do, we can use participants, and in the participants box, we can do that, right? So somehow I'm not seeing it right now. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Oh no, and now
Or-
everything went away.
Or Dana, if they use the reactions, there's a yes, no.
Yes. And I just messed things up. Because when I stopped sharing, all the votes went away, everything I
Okay.
did on the annotation went away. So we have to go by memory. Ouch. Sorry, Pylayeva, on that one. Okay, so let me fix at least the participants part. So in the participants, you can do yes, no, go slow, go faster. So if we want to continue with this topic for another 5 minutes, then go ahead and click the yes button. And If you think that you had enough information ready to move on, go ahead and click on the No button. And if you're wondering where to do it, that's in your participants list. Okay, so getting 5 no's, 1 yes so far. So it looks like we're ready to move on.
Okay. Health insurance then. So if you look at the handout, oh, let me give us 10-minute timer, right?
Yep.
10 minutes. Start. Okay. So if you look at the handout, and again, I use that index because it makes it fast to go up and down. And you look at the health insurance, what I'm aware of as your options are that thing you see in that bulleted list there. This is page 12, it looks like. You can do private gap insurance, but it doesn't cover pre-existing conditions. It's basically not a good option. Other than if you're desperate and it's your only option, it's better than nothing. This is for health insurance. There's the ACA Obamacare, stuff. The problem that I have found is that the doctor networks don't seem to be good. It doesn't seem to be anywhere near the sort of large group health insurance that you're probably used to having from an employer. They do disallow, they're not allowed to discriminate based on pre-existing conditions, and all that part is good. On the surface, it looks good, but the reality is the best plans you can get are just not that good. As far as they'll challenge the claims, my wife had to go to the emergency room once for some minor thing. I don't remember what it was. And we had an ACA plan and they just weren't that good. I've never had that experience with my Aetna plans at all. It's been much better. You cannot beat your spouse's plan. If your spouse's plan if your spouse works somewhere that she gets decent insurance, and by decent, I don't mean that it's inexpensive or expensive, whatever your part of the copay or whatever your part of the premium is. I mean, does it have good doctor networks? If you get in a serious accident, are you going to be okay? That's what I mean by that. Any insurance plan that is subsidized by the employer of your spouse is going to be radically cheaper than anything you pay for yourself, because when you pay yourself, you're paying the full freight. You're paying, an unsubsidized rate. So as long as you can get anything decent from your spouse, you cannot beat that. You don't even need to look at anything else. COBRA is good. And when I first transferred into consulting, I was able to continue on COBRA for some time. And that was good because the insurance was decent. Yes, the premium was like, $1,200 or so a month, but that's the unsubsidized cost. So that's fine. But the problem is that you hit a cliff. Eventually you hit 18 months and you can't extend it. And so that's a problem. If you have a real small company with just a handful of employees, there is, I should back up on ACA. It varies by state. Some states have healthier ACA marketplaces than others. And so what's true in Wisconsin, and especially what's true in Milwaukee, your experience may be different in other states. You may be able to get a better quality of insurance, but it's almost impossible to compare apples to apples because the data that you need of how good are they at paying off and all of that is not there. That data is not publicly available, and that's your problem. They should make it available, but that's a political conversation. Politics is like the weather. You can't change it. All you can do is see there's a storm coming and deal with it, right? It doesn't matter what your politics is or isn't. That's not your job.
Complain about it. You can complain about it. That's what you can do.
Yeah. Your job as an independent is to see the weather and try to prepare for it. Small group. So small companies that have, half a dozen employees or whatever, they've been able to go and get, the governments have said you have to have small group insurance. I don't know the quality of small group insurance. What I do know is the insurance lobbies have managed to have small group insurance defined as 2 or more, and that's 2 or more in, you know, different households, as the definition of small group. With a few exceptions, there's a few states, as you see in the list down there, that have explicitly come out and said, no, small group is one. And if you live in one of those states that have small group defined as one, and again, this reference material, you know, that small group definition by state, that kfff.org, breaks us down in some big fancy chart. But it basically boils down to that short list of states there. Anywhere else, if you're a single shingle, you're stuck as far as small group goes. And again, I can't speak to the quality of it. I just don't know. It may or may not be better than the ACA stuff. Large group, it's the real thing. So if you do a PEO, which is a co-employment arrangement, what happens is, so I personally am if we look down, I've got a little chart. Where's my little fancy graphic?
Page 27.
27.
Is that what you're
Really
looking
that
for?
way down?
The corporate relationship, or is that a different?
Ah,
one?
yes, it's 20. Yeah, it's a little bit less. Okay, yes, page 27. So if you look on page 27, which is a long way away from the PEO stuff, because it's about how do you get the pass through to shut up and be okay. You have this diagram here where I am actually employed by Agile Carpentry, but I'm also employed by TriNet. So my W-2 is actually issued on TriNet's federal ID, EIN.
James, is it something we should be sharing?
Yeah, this
Would
is
that be
okay.
useful? Okay. No. I'm saying through the.
Oh, sure.
so-
No, if you want, sure. Since we lost the other anyway.
Yeah, I didn't mean that. Oh, how dare you talking about that? No, I meant.
No.
Do we want to see the picture? Are you able to share?
I've seen it because I'm just moving the PDF around, and I figured most people have the PDF open. But so basically, so I am my W-2 self, my employee self, gets a paycheck from TriNet, and TriNet, anything TriNet pays James, TriNet invoices Agile Carpentry for, right? So TriNet is effectively a fancy payroll service where they make sure that the taxes are done right in every state and all that. But because they do this for a whole bunch of companies, and because the paperwork details are slightly different, because James technically works on paper, James works for TriNet in a co-employment arrangement, then TriNet is able to go to the medical insurance providers, the medical insurance companies, and say, hey, I have this large pool of, 2,000 employees, and I would like large group healthcare insurance. Even though the truth is that all these employees are working for companies that have 1 employee, 2 employees, 5 employees, but it allows the PEO to go with a big bat and get large group healthcare insurance. And so if you make use of a PEO, you can get the same kind of insurance that you get working for, most any other company, certainly comparable to what you'd get working for a mid-sized company with, 1,000, 5,000 employees. The downside is more paperwork complexity, and the fact that it's hard to find a national PEO that will allow a single employee officer only company. In fact, there's nobody that I'm currently aware of that will do it. TriNet used to do it, and I'm grandfathered. JustWorks will let you do it for 2. To give you an idea, there's about like 800 of these PEOs in the country, because there's some list and it's got about 800 of them. And the ones that are that have done all these certifications is like 2 or 3 or 4 dozen of them. By the time you start narrowing down which ones are national, which ones have coverage for every state in the US, which ones have this AIC certification, which ones have, there's an IRS certification now. You start narrowing down that list, you get down to a few dozen. When you start asking which ones allow you to have only one, say 2 employees, you get down to a really short, when you say 5 employees, you get down to a pretty short list. When you say 2 employees, you get to an even shorter list. When you say 1 employee, you used to get down to 1, and that was TriNet, TriNet, or TriNet. Now you get nobody. But I've looked at what JustWorks can do, and the quality of the high deductible HSA compatible plan that they have with Aetna is almost identical to my TriNet plan. It seems to be the similar doctor networks, similar copays, et cetera, similar premium. And the service fee is a little lower with JustWorks.
And looks like the time is up,
and where
James.
time is up, yes. So do we want to keep going?
Okay.
There was a
Okay.
question in the chat about ACA state level versus national level. I don't know if anybody has any. I know when I was in California working for a company, I had Kaiser. When I moved to Texas, I was on Cobra under Blue Cross, and I recently changed to ACA, which cut in half my premium, but my deductible went from $1,000 to $8,000 in my out of pocket, which is okay for me because I don't have any major medical issues, but it is state related, and in my case, it's certain hospitals, Baptist hospitals that you can go to. But the national thing for me, at least, is if you travel, it's the emergency portion of it, but it's not national. And I don't know how Blue Cross does it, but I know like Kaiser's, not in Texas, obviously, so I had to change to Blue Cross when I moved to Texas for Cobra.
Are we great? We're keep going, right? That was a decision. I saw greens. Oh, can it's a stop?
Does anyone else have any idea or any insights that they wanted to share in this area?
I had a quick question. I was just curious if any of the solopreneurs are using health reimbursement accounts. I hear there's some tax advantages to that for the solopreneur.
Interesting.
Okay.
I'm on my
Well,
husband's insurance, so
yeah.
don't know.
If I find out, I will share it back. So
Yeah, that'd be good.
So you can. I don't think it's any different than normal. If you have a high deductible HSA compatible plan, you can't use an FSA, I think. And then and there's another quirk. If your company does not have a medical insurance plan, and then you are able to reimburse employees for their medical plans. So there's a tax game there.
yes, that's what I have heard. Which basically, there's some ways to do that. So you basically get tax-free reimbursement for yourself also, is what I've heard.
Yes, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Your out-of-pocket portion can be tax-free in that case. Yeah. Which I don't.
So
I don't do that, but I looked at it, but I don't have enough medical expenses right now to make it worth my while, so I don't do that. But that's my
FSA is a use it or lose it plan, right? That's if you don't burn it, you lose it.
But I don't believe an HRA is.
Yeah, not HRA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So just another option for those who are on the ACA Obamacare path.
Yeah. So in theory, you could build up a big out of pocket if you could build that up, and then you would be ready if you had a year where you had to spend down in my case, $8,000. You could in theory,
especially those dealing with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah,
you are going to rack that up.
Right. Yeah.
So James, you said the list goes down to 0 for one employee.
Yes, well, there's a trick. JustWorks allows 2. So let's say that you had a college kid that was in college, and you
Yeah.
made sure that their primary residence was not your home,
Mhm.
right? That it was their college dump. Then you could, instead of giving them an allowance or whatever, you could put them on salary at minimum wage for $30 for 30 hours a week. And that would allow you to, that would be an excuse to work.
So
If
what I
you
meant-
had enough work for an admin, that would work, right? If you had enough work to keep an admin that busy, then that would do it.
Okay, and I didn't mean to skip ahead to PS or PEO, but under PEO
That's all mixed together.
it says PEO employee 1 TriNet on page.
Yeah, that used to be true. And then you see a caveat down below. It says, "Oh, update." They changed.
Oh, okay, all right.
But they may flip flop. So like, ask them in a year, and they may say, "Oh yeah, we went back to doing it again." So they have historically. I've talked to the lady who's involved and one of their marketing rep kind of people, and it seems to be some sort of a risk assessment they make kind of year over year, and it depends what their mix of people are. And so some years they may, and some years they won't, and anyway, it is what it is.
So what's the best next option for single shingle, someone moving from like the FTE world to, starting their own company? Would you say use Cobra for 18 months and then do something else, or?
Well, so the first is spouse.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah. That's
If
the obvious
you can't do-
best choice. I'm
if
not
you can't
married
do-
though. So
If you can't do spouse, probably Cobra, but that only gives you 18 months.
yeah.
And then if your ACA plans are any good, and that, as David talked about, that's really state dependent.
Yeah.
And the data you really need, we don't have.
Like in my case, I did Cobra, and to talk real numbers. I moved to Texas, had to change the plan, but my premium was about $750 a month for a normal kind of corporate Blue Cross plan that had a $1,500 out of pocket, something like that. I moved to an ACA plan, and because of income, I don't get any kind of discount, but mine is through Oscar. I have no idea how they are because I don't really have any medical issues, so I have no experience there. And it is limited to hospitals, I think Baptist system hospitals, and then all the urgent care stuff. Now, my out-of-pocket is around $8,000, but the premium is half of what it was under the other. So I kind of wish I had not done Cobra for a year and saved the, $350 a month. So a part of it is a decision whether you have medical issues and pre-existing conditions that you think you'd run up that bill or not. If you wouldn't, you may want to consider not doing Cobra. And I probably should have just done that. I just did it by default, didn't think about it until the timer ran out. But it's all an individual decision.
And some of the state level plan has like tier 1, tier 2 kind of approach. And if you have a high school kid who will be going at various places for games and may come across some serious injury, which you may or may not know. So that's where the state plan prevents you for going.
Yeah. And you have in the ACA plans, at least in Texas, you can get an equivalent, and I could pay probably about $800 a month and get something that's kind of the equivalent of what I had under the corporate plan. But so it's just a question of where you are in your life, and you also can. I'm assuming this. If I got into a situation where I did have medical issues and was having a recurring cost, I could simply next year change my plan to a lower deductible, more expensive plan if that made financial sense for me.
By the way, I can tell you guys, large group is way worse. So even after I pay TriNet service fee, which is bad, that's like they charge me basically 3 employees worth. So it's almost $1,000 in service fee. The insurance premium is more like $1,200, $1,300. And if you go with JustWorks, they'll charge you like $250 or so an employee, and then they'll charge you about that same amount, that $1,200-ish, $1,300-ish to get. That's HSA high deductible insurance. That's again comparable to your Cobra number. But you said your Cobra number was 800.
But that was one person. That was one.
For
one
is that
person.
the Delta?
So you're talking two people. When you say 1,200, it's for you and your wife.
You and my
right?
spouse, yes, that's
Yeah,
right, myself
so,
and my spouse.
yeah.
Is there
So
anyone
yours is-
else seeing times up in big letters? So I must just.
Yes, sorry,
is it
sorry,
just me?
yes. I was waiting for you to slap us.
Oh gosh, I didn't know I had the slapper roll today.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Okay, so since we don't have the that voted list anymore, I remember there were quite a few stamps around marketing and sales. Or was there anything else that was higher, if anyone remembers?
Well, yeah, we had medical and then we had PEO, and those both had a lot.
Yep.
And the real question is, I guess we should ask quickly, does anyone else have any other PEO nuance questions that are worth a few minutes? And if not, then we definitely are done with the whole PEO medical chunk, which are two things, two line items, but they're almost one item. Does anybody have any more quick questions on that we really need to deal with?
Or maybe insights that they can share.
Yeah, even better.
Okay.
Marketing then, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Dana, I know you and David know more than I do.
Well, so I'm going to share what worked and what didn't work for me. And again, I'm a big DIY person, so I don't like hire assistants or pay, probably because I'm not at that level yet. So this is my third year of being an independent consultant. And so because I have a bit of a technical background, I also am not scared of trying to build my own website, as inefficient as it might be. But again, this is what I'm going to share with you all, and see if it works for you. If it doesn't, then you can learn from my mistakes, not yours. How does that sound? Yes? No? Okay, cool. So some of the things that I'm keeping in mind on as I'm doing it. So one is that there is a theory behind it. So there is this marketing funnel that you might have been aware of. And I've worked for a digital marketing company before. So basically, there is always a huge number of impressions, or the times that you're showing up, or the information about you showing up, that has to happen before someone is going to click on something that you're sharing. And so out of the much smaller number of clicks that are going to happen, the number of transactions is going to be even less. And that transaction is actually what's going to happen, what's going to bring you money, right? So it's large number of impressions, much smaller number of clicks, and a tiny number of transactions. So that's the, just keep that funnel in mind, because if you're doing any kind of public training, or you're doing any kind of you're offering any kind of services that need people to sign up through the public facing way of bringing clients, that's something that's going to work or not, depending on how well you're reaching out the target audience as well. That's another thing to keep in mind. So that's the funnel. The other aspect of it is that in our world of services where we provide them, a lot of times it just works based on the word of mouth. So someone saw you in action and they wanted you to come and do the same thing for them. Or someone spoke to somebody else who saw you in action and they want to bring you on board. So that's, again, from my experience. And James, David, anything to add there? Word
Yeah,
of
same.
mouth,
It's
marketing, like what works?
Yeah, I think for me, when I started independent, it was word of mouth and having discussions, and so that's kept me busy, except for a couple of months after the pandemic started and everybody freaked out and nobody wanted to do anything. But I'm starting to think about a broader. But initially, yeah, your network can definitely get you some work. And what I've seen is, what's interesting that I didn't kind of expect is, I work with clients and certain people in, like in the technical organization, you have people leave and go to other companies, and then they move to another company, and then they will call me and say, hey, can you do the same thing, kind of thing. So you also have to get the folks that are maybe below the leadership level that may move to other organizations, and your name will then be spoken in another organization that you have no contacts with. So trying to get those all levels that you work with the client may be important to expand your network. But that's worked so far. initially.
What about you, James? How do you get your clients?
So mine has mostly been direct, networking type things. And it's also mostly been all consuming in flavor. So instead of me, like a butterfly going client to client to client, or I'm doing training one week and I'm doing something else the other week, it's usually I'm on the ground embedded with the client. I'm on a plane every Monday. I come home every Friday. Same client, same place. You get to know the bellman in the hotel. You know everybody by name after a while, and how their girlfriend's doing and all that. So it's different, and that also reflects, I've got where I was using an admin for my expenses because I'm barely able to keep my head above water just with all the travel and being on site all the time and focusing on the client. It doesn't make sense for me to spend 3 hours a week dealing with a week's worth of expense reports. If I were just, when I don't do that now, when I travel, when I'm between clients and I travel briefly, I just do the expenses myself. So it changes how much do you just offload. And that's also true of my CPA. Because when I am traveling heavy, the CPA has read-only access to the bank. They can't make the transactions, but they have read-only access. And they do to Expensify as well. They do to QuickBooks. And so that kind of runs on autopilot. But there's a cost to that autopilot, right? When I looked at PEOs, I only looked at national PEOs. So this is kind of off the sales topic, except what you need, who are you selling to? Are you selling to some senior executive who is going to say yes or no, and once they say yes, that's the decision? Or are you selling, public training to everybody who's probably going to use their company money to do it, but the boss will basically send them to anything they ask them to send them to that's reasonable. And so you're really marketing to, all those individual contributors or, maybe first level managers. And that's a different marketing funnel than the other. So I'm not good at, you're doing a lot more of the butterfly work, Dana, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's so much better at that marketing side than I am. And that's one of the reasons why.
But you hit on something very important, and I think if we can call it persona, I think everyone will know what I'm talking about, right? So thinking about who is that person that you want to attract, right? So who is that person that will say yes? Is it a person who is signing up for your public speaking class, for the public class? So it's someone who has to get approval from somebody else. Is it an executive who is going to bring you in for a longer engagement? So who is your primary target audience, right? So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is just, to me, it's just like building a product. So your company is your product. So thinking about what resonates, what doesn't, where to pivot, how do I run this minimum viable experiment and see what's working and what's not. And if it's not working, how do I change my strategy? So that's what it's been for me in terms of what I offer, in terms of how I market. So same thing. So thinking what resonates, if it doesn't, change in the strategy. I'm seeing a few comments on chat in terms of LinkedIn. So it's interesting. I found that Twitter doesn't work for me at all as the marketing channel. It just doesn't. LinkedIn works better because of the type of people that I'm connected with. So it's the network that matters. Facebook doesn't work because I kept it as the friends only. I do have a few people from the community who are there, but mostly on the network there, it's my friends. And so even if I market to my friends, first of all, I hate doing that. The other, it just doesn't resonate. So LinkedIn for me remains the primary marketing channel. And to someone's point there, I think, Mark, you mentioned that it became so noisy. So everyone is doing that as well. And so it's just becoming noise. And after some time, you have to think about, okay, what else? How do I change that? How do I stand out, among all the other offerings that are there. So yeah, that's there. And Ken, to your question, what's most effective for me? So I find that word of mouth is the most effective. When people come to my class, they like it, they come back to the organization and say, hey, I've seen this class, it's awesome, let's bring Dana on. So I've had many clients who are private clients who had initially had somebody from those companies coming to my public class. So in a way, public classes act as its own marketing channel.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like word of mouth is still like the premium way to go.
Yeah. What's interesting there is that, and Roman, I'm gonna get to you. Just let me finish this, and then I want to hear what you want to say. So you still need to have a website, because a lot of companies, when they bring you on board, they still want you to put your URL to your website. And if you don't have it, it kind of looks unprofessional. Even if it's, to me, the version I have, it's the MVP version. I need to improve it, make it better, but at least there is something there, and I can put it in the form, and I can send people to that, so that works. So I'm seeing time is up. I said Roman was showing that he wanted to say something. So Roman, why don't you go and then...
Hello, everybody. Thank you for guys organizing this. I'm a big supporter of this group, and I see a lot of independent consultants. I've been independent consultant for over 16 years. So a couple keys to success is you have to diversify your offering. So yes, a lot of you are coaches, but you can do the Scrum Master work, let's say, you know what I'm saying? So being open to different engagements, obviously, like, yeah, we want to be coaches, but you know, you can get a Scrum Master gig. I found useful to associate with professional business schools specializing in IT. So I have a relationship, for example, with a business school in New York, and I teach classes there. And again, you get exposed to many clients, to new people. They can recommend you. They may ask you for personal coaching, right? So diversifying your offering, having multiple revenue streams always helps you during the time, the downtime, right? When the times are good, monies are flowing in, save and invest. So this way you have like a backup, right? So taking advantage of saving, smart investment also helps, right? It all generates, 4 or 5 different revenue streams. Okay. See if you can share your experience and become like a career coach or a life coach for some people, especially who are trying to get into the industry. That also, another revenue stream. Okay. So now about LinkedIn. So I do personal coaching for 8 years now, right? So I'm like on top of the job market, not only for Scrum Masters and coaches, but on all levels. And in the past 12 months, LinkedIn just exploded. I had number of contracts just from LinkedIn. They leapfrog technologically and marketing wise over the dice. So a lot of professionals, a lot of recruiters moved to LinkedIn. Now, to be successful on LinkedIn, I don't use any mess emails, I don't pay LinkedIn nothing, okay? But how many connections do you have? So the investment that I made, I have over 15,000 connections, right? I'm not very selective, but I do try to connect with HR, recruiters, senior level IT executives, right? So I look who I contact, or if I contact somebody, I look at their contacts and try to get senior people. So within 12 months, I got contacted by a senior level executive in one of the big companies, and says, you gotta have, like you said, website. Your profile should be spot on. Professional picture, professional background, list of the companies, nice descriptions, what you did. So show some investment in your face, in your brand, Okay.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Roman. So if you want to put maybe a link to your website in the chat so people can take a look at it, that would be awesome. I'm getting the time is up sign, and I'm also getting in, hey, can we wrap up at 12:30 so people can actually have lunch and get back to their loved ones. So thank you. I appreciate your insights. James, what's next? Yeah, Ken.
Well, what was I don't remember.
I'll keep it really short.
Okay.
So Mark, first off, I'm kind of curious, like, what do you use for email marketing? Like, how do you handle that? Do you maintain your own list, or do you use a company or something to manage that, opt-outs and all that?
Yeah, so I don't go too long on this because I don't want to take away from those who the organizers. I've maintained my own. The key is write consistently, which I need to get better at. There are free options that are good. I saw that MailChimp was listed in the handout. I actually started with MailerLite because you can get automations for free. MailChimp, it starts off free and it gets expensive very fast. Same thing with HubSpot. So they have a lot of nice features for free and they get you hooked. And then when you want to actually pay for it, it gets very expensive. I'll keep it short from there. I'm not on MailerLite right now. I'm actually in ConvertKit, but that's for personal reasons. I like the user interface better. But MailerLite's a good place to start if you want to experiment with good email automation. They have a great newsletter. I would sign up for their newsletter. They have some great tips there.
Okay. And then the other thing I just want to say, what's been successful for me is actually kind of almost subcontracting in some ways the marketing to consulting companies and doing corp to corp with them and letting them find some of the clients for me. So I just want to throw that out there as something. Now that there's an issue with that, obviously you're not going to make the same amount of money, but if you're starting out, it might be a good option to at least get your name out there and everything. So thanks.
Very good point. Thank you. So James, what's next?
Well, what was on the list? I don't remember. What got all the dots? We lost it kind of.
We lost the dots. Okay, so I know we did not want to talk about
between LLC and S Corp. C Corp. A lot of questions about it.
All right.
Okay. So James,
by the way, this doesn't have to be just the panelists who have depth here. So anybody who's got depth, please tell us. I mean, I know only a little. I don't know much more than what you'd find reading an article.
Can I add one thing on this topic? So guys, on the marketing topic, when we run our own corporations, we have expenses and stuff, right? So marketing expense is a legit expense. What we want is to combine a bunch of like everyday expenses, traveling, cell phone, your electricity bill, internet bill, things that are like percentage wise, right? But you want to have your corporation, you have to put your corporation mindset on. So marketing expenses are good expenses because mixing legitimate corporate expenses make you a legit corporation. That legitimizes every other expense. Okay, so yeah, having subscriptions for $20 a month with Jira, with MailChimp, all kind of these little things, even some kind of license, Microsoft license, pay it, right? Other like subscriptions, even safe certifications, renewals, all these expenses, buying books, don't save this $20. You gotta like have these list of good expenses that normal company will use.
So I think the interest here was in type of corporate entity, right? Do we want an LLC? Do we want a C Corp? Normally people talk about S Corp, and S Corp is typically an LLC. That's S Corp is a tax election, at least for most cases. I think some states there is such a thing as an S Corp. But,
well, S Corp.
Roman, can we hear some other voices as well? That'd be awesome. Thank you for insight.
So what are the questions here, guys, or what? Anybody have some nuance on what the interest around this is?
What's the difference between LLC and S Corp? A lot of people.
So, guys, LLC is obviously lower overhead, right? There are constraints in you can't have voting shares that have different levels of power, right? So if you're going to get venture capital money, that won't work because you can't have fine-grained types of shares with different voting authorities and all of that. The LLCs don't even have to have you don't even have to have the board formally meet on a regular basis, and you have to, with a C Corp, you have to do at least that like once a year or something, I think. The LLC can be taxed basically any way you want based on how you file your CPA files the paperwork, or you just fill in a form and send it. It tells you which way to go.
Well, you have to you have to make a decision, right? So when you're
Yes.
forming an LLC, you have, I believe it's 90 days during which you have to select how you want to be taxed. And so there are different forms that you need to fill out. And again, I'm incorporated in New York City, so there might be different nuances in different states. But basically, another thing is that I didn't know when I formed the LLC is that when you're forming an LLC in New York, you have to have announcement about it published in many different papers, and you have to have proof that you did it, even though it doesn't make sense in our age and time of internet. You still have to publish it in the newspaper. If I formed it as the corporation to begin with, I wouldn't have to do it.
I think there's an interesting warning here about incorporation. A lot of people, they're like, well, I want to start a company. They've never started a company before. That's where, I was, certainly. Mm-hmm. And if you go Googling for, you want to form a company, the vultures are everywhere. Most of the links that come up will be, we'll form a company for you, and we'll do, we'll give you little business cards or whatever. They'll show you all kinds of nonsense. And they're trying to trap you, or they'll act as your registered agent, but then the registered agent fees are bad, or they can only be a registered agent in that one state. So the better vendors are nice, honorable, great companies to do business with, but so many of them are not. I have been very happy with Northwest Registered Agent because the company that originally formed, they did a good job, I suppose, in that regard. But, they really wanted to make you pay $600 a year in mail forwarding fees. And they really could only do registered agent in Wyoming and maybe one or two other states. So I think they did fine with the little kit, and they were better priced than some. I don't feel that they were dishonorable as some of the players are. But even they weren't as good as they could have been. What I should have done, I should have gone to Northwest Registered Agent or anyone else of like 2 or 3 that are rated just the same as they are. And I should have just used them to incorporate. And then you do have this question of, well, what state should you do it in? That's talked about some in the handout. Mostly I give you links to places that talk about what are your options there. It mostly boils down to, if you got a house, you're stay put, and you don't think that you're ever going to leave where you live, you probably just want to incorporate in your own state. If you think you may leave the state that you live in, then you probably want to incorporate in Wyoming if you're a single shingle. If you're going to do a startup with VC money and all this, you're probably going to incorporate in Delaware.
Just to add, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, no, I was just going to say that the answer here is go use Northwest Registered Agent or one of their very highly rated competitors and avoid the vultures. Know that there are lots of predators in this space.
Yep.
And don't get eaten by them. That was really the message. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, living in New York City and making that mistake of incorporating in New York City, that's something that I learned over the years that I shouldn't have done that. And I moved my company now to New York State because that way I don't need to pay additional taxes on corporation in New York City.
Yeah, you have to pay a register. You have to pay a file as an alien corporation. So if you're registered in Wyoming or Nevada or whatever, when you do business in another state, you're going to have to pay the alien corporation filing fees, which cost you. It's not like you save money because you're incorporated in Wyoming, tax wise. You
So
save
yes,
money
ask your
because when you're no
CPA.
longer working in New York, when
Yeah,
you're no
ask your
longer working in New
CPA.
York, you're detached from New York.
Yeah.
When David is no longer living in California, it's easier to get the tentacles away from.
Yeah, I'm very
California's tentacles
detached
away
from California at this point, believe me. Now, I would say that I use Northwest, and they may have been a little more expensive, although in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot of money if you're going into consulting. And so that was super easy, and they notify you and they keep up the paperwork and all that stuff. And I'm registered in Texas, and I live in Texas. The other thing that I'll comment about this, especially if you go for a single member LLC, which is what I am, just to keep it super simple, and it ties into what Roman said about kind of the expenses, is one, to keep it very tight, separating your personal from your business. So I have a business bank account and all these kind of recurring subscriptions, all this stuff. I have a Visa debit card thing. I try to keep very clear about the business expenses. It makes it very easy for reporting and what's tax deductible versus what isn't. And then even though I'm a single member LLC and it's very simple, I do keep up with, just in case this becomes an issue, with corporate reporting so that there's a separation. So I do have meeting notes with myself. And if I'm going to buy a new computer or whatever, I kind of log that as if I'm having some kind of meeting with myself.
I'm doing the same.
So that if it comes up where you do have a legal issue, at least it provides some obvious separation that, this isn't just I have a separation from my business and my personal. So you can do a very kind of minimal basis of that. And getting banking accounts is very simple. Once you have incorporated or have an LLC, it's not a big deal. And then it becomes very, very simple to have all that run through that account, and reporting becomes much easier.
Yeah, you can always add a credit. Like I have a credit card too that's tied to the corporation.
Yeah, you can
as well, and you get cash back and that kind of stuff that I then
Yeah.
only apply to the corporation's business, expenses itself, just to keep everything separate. But there's some advantages.
Any
I
advantage
talked to
in,
Timeline a bit.
Incorporating in Delaware, because a lot of large corporation, they like to get incorporated over there because of all the tax benefits. Is there tax benefits for independent consultants to incorporate over there?
I don't think so. Your home state that you live in is going to tax you. So I don't think, from Texas, it doesn't matter because there is no individual taxes, but I would have a CPA look at that because I'm not sure that it's as advantageous as you might think for a single member.
Folks,
Yeah.
quick time check, James. We got -7, 6 minutes, so let's see if we can maybe take some additional Q&A, you guys, maybe, and maybe when you start wrapping things up. I think this has been a great conversation. Just I'm gonna give you a heads up. Yep. Maybe.
Oh, by the way, the Delaware answer is Delaware has like real established case law and all of this. So if you have complex C Corp type stuff, Delaware is good for that apparently. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but they like to charge you for it. The advantage of the Wyomings of the world is they're set up to charge very little fees, not to tax you. So you go to Delaware because you need well-established case law when big company sues another big company. You go to these little havens like Wyoming when, hey, it's just you, and you want low fees and that kind of thing.
Thanks. Yeah, in my case, my CPA thought it was good to incorporate in Delaware, but thank you.
Do we have any questions or comments from people who haven't had a chance to speak yet?
I have a question here. What I learned from the difference between S Corp and LLC is how you can keep your personal asset away. So could that be a main reason to make a decision?
So there are different in the taxes that you pay as well, because as a corporation, you pay as a corporation, as an individual working for that corporation. But there are, I believe, more tax advantages in terms of what kind of expenses you can deduct as a corporation.
Maybe
And
let
that's a tax election. That's an election status. Your corporate
Yes.
entity would be an LLC. And then as an LLC, you can choose to be taxed as a sole proprietorship / partnership. You can choose to be taxed as a pass-through corporation, which is what an S Corp is, or you can choose to be taxed as like a C Corp is taxed.
let me rephrase my question. What I was looking for is, let's say I have a personal asset. Let's say I have a $1 million in my account, and if my company files bankruptcy, in that case, how it will be used, and in terms of what I open as Corp versus LLC.
Oh, you mean if there's a different level of protection for your personal assets between an LLC and an S Corp?
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that.
Oh,
If there's a different level.
I know a little bit about this. So first of all, we want to open corporation to put a layer of protection between us and the lawsuit, especially when we do something at work. So that's why we spoke about insurance. So having insurance on your corporation, that creates this liability, right? It's LLC, limited liability company. So whatever you do as the business, right? Something happens. That's why you have the car in company name, you insure insurance in the company name. So something happens, they can go only after, after that insurance in the corporation, and the lawyers of insurance company will be protecting you. Okay, so that's one of the biggest reasons to have a corporation, right? Also, when we get the contracts, they much rather big companies rather pay corp to corp than 1099. That's another reason. The third reason is that if you're working on 1099 from the tax perspective from government, it's you paying yourself, self-employed. So you gotta have a profit, okay? Because you live off that income. As a corporation, you're okay to lose money. Most of the companies lose money at 1 year or another, right? So having a corporation, it's okay to have a negative year or a zero year or a small profit year. As a 1099, they'll go and say, well, you live on this money, you gotta have a profit. Okay, so for me, that's the three major reasons.
Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm just gonna repeat what's been said in the chat. So whatever we're sharing today, this is kind of what we experienced in our experiments that we had. It's what worked, what didn't work for us. We're not attorneys. We're not, CPAs. We're not offering this as a legal advice. This is just sharing with community what worked for us and what didn't. So keep it with a grain of salt, and definitely before making any decision based on this conversation, consult your attorney, consult your CPA.
That's a very important and strong statement. I agree. Make sure folks understand this is not explicit recommendation, so you can really just blindly follow or copycat what anyone here shared, although some of these are great, some great experiences, right? So take those as such, as experiences by a few, and everyone's situation is different. So you have to do your due diligence and talk to your counselor, whether it's the tax, CPA or person or an attorney. Okay, but clearly some great ideas here. Yep.
It would be darn handy if you find a CPA who is also a certified financial advisor. Mine is not. I've found one in town. Very few of them are. And you want the kind of financial advisor that you have to pay, not the one who takes it out of on commission and puts you in their stuff, right? So if you can find the intersection of that, or maybe both are at the same company, right? It's a company that does both. That would probably be better, because the laws have been written so that the lawyer can only talk about lawyer things, and the financial planner can only talk about financial planner stuff, and the CPA can only talk about CPA stuff. And that leaves you to have to try to tie all that stuff together. What you really want is someone who doesn't have the handcuffs and is able to talk about that. Because it shouldn't be us three here that are trying to help you navigate this. The reason that there's no map out there is because all these laws that have kept everybody from only talking about their one thing. The more you can find somebody that can talk about all things because they've got all the licenses, the better off you'll be as far as quality of counsel.
But I will say for people who are not involved in kind of the independent life is figure out how you can start now, even if you're working and don't let a lot of this discussion prevent you from getting out there, because the sooner you start, the better off you're going to be. And if you get into a situation where you have to start, you're already behind the 8 ball. So start now when you can. Don't let a lot of this kind of legal discussion prevent you from doing the research and getting started, even if it's small, because you'll be glad you did if it turns out that you want to or need to go independent.
I just want to finish with one last, share out. I know Gina's saying like time's up, but I just want to say it's scary when you start. I started in October. I had a large client that was, kind of had me covered for the first 2 months. I was super excited. By middle of November, there was nothing. December, it was nothing. And as you know, in December, that's the time when everyone celebrates and lots of parties. I felt horrible because I didn't have that. That was my first year. So things are very different now, but it's scary at times. And just don't be too hard on yourself and reach out to others who are in the same boat.
Thank you. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, David, and thank you, Jim, for coming together and doing this. And I appreciate everyone who joined. Your questions were great. Your contribution was appreciated. Let's wrap now and just see if you have any questions, you can definitely crisscross and interact directly. You don't need me to facilitate anything that follows this conversation on the subject, right? And keep coming back to the meetup. Of course, we're going to have some great events coming up soonish, right? A couple of weeks. There's one I'm thinking right now. There'll be more thereafter, about less. So anyway, thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and stay safe. And of course, on this matter, you got to have your legal counselors and accountants handy in case if you need to proceed and actually take it to the next level. Yep. Thanks.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Be well,
Bye.
everyone.